whenever we talk about Kama Sutra, the center is always mostly men. Uh, but Dr. Alka Pande, with whom I am doing this uh, podcast, she has written two books: the New Age Kama Sutra for women and the Naika and Kama. She takes her pleasure as part of her collection Kama Quadrant. So today we are talking about women and Kama Sutra. And Dr. Pandey, as I said, has already written two books on it. This is our episode number 12, season 2 of Art Indica with Dr. Alka Pandey and Nitish. And we are talking about erotica and Indian art. Welcome to this episode, Dr. Pandey. And so this is a very different view because over the centuries we have seen in our mythologies, in our uh, folklores, in our text, we see that everything is designed around men largely, even in religion, even in our prayers, we see. But to see that how women have a kind of a role to play. I mean, even in West, we saw this film like there, Mackenzie, where there's when he surveyed women's sex thing, he was like hugely opposed. The society has a problem about women having their sexual emancipation, and you were the first to write on this. So, what were you thinking when you started talking and writing about this?
So actually, I wasn't thinking anything, Nidish. You know, a lot of visibility of texts, a lot of visibility of writing, as you know, in literature in particular, I credit to publishers, clever publishers. And like you will see, certain publishers have made women writers, certain patrons have given wind under the wings of women. So, what happened to me was that when I wrote the Indian erotica for the first time, and it was published in 2001, there was a sensation that a woman is writing, an Indian woman in India is writing on Indian erotica. In some ways, I crossed the Lakshman Rekha because women don't write about sex, particularly in India, in a non-academic, non-fiction way either. So when I was commissioned to doing the book on Indian erotica by Rowley, I was really, and it was many years ago, I was not as confident as I am today, almost a quarter of a century after having written my first book on India or Indian erotica. I've come a long way since then. But when I started writing, I definitely leaned heavily on the rasa theory, and I wrote from the point of view of Shringar rasa. Now, my publisher Pramod Kapoor was an extremely astute and a smart man, and after I did my Indian erotica, the same editor who worked on my Indian erotica, Veena Baswani, had moved to Brijbasi Press, and she came to me saying that would I do a Kama Sutra for women. I jumped at the idea because by which time it was 2 years since I had written my Indian erotica, and since I had done my doctoral work on Ardhanarishwar, and I am so grateful for that work that I've done because it is between masculinity and femininity. It is Shiva and Shakti, Shiva standing for the masculine and Shakti for the women. So I was very, very confident that I could do a balanced kind of Kama Sutra for women because I would go back as an academic, go back to my ancient texts, and I thought I would look at Parvati as the epitome of the woman who had her own agency for sex. Now, Parvati was not a Vaishika or the courtesan. Parvati was the goddess. Parvati was somebody who was dedicated to Shiva, and after a lot of tapasya, she got the Adi Yogi, the Adi Bhogi Shiva as her husband. And it was through their erotic love making that the Kama Sutra happened. And I thought, why don't I think, or why does Parvati not become my leitmotif for the woman who will have her agency for having sex? Now, Parvati was the Ardha Nari Ishwara, the complete other of this great masculine man, and for me she became the emblem for the woman. And there is an absolutely, which I will show along the course of our conversation, a couple of images from my book where the artists too, male artists, have shown the representation of women in a very bold manner. So when I got the commission to do the New Age Kama Sutra for women, I started re-looking at a lot of miniature paintings, because it is, as I told you earlier too, it is in the miniature paintings that a lot of erotica or the aesthetics of the erotica is seen. I find sculptures more direct. They are not as nuanced as paintings, because the sculptures are done in the generally in the external facades of temple for the lay people. It's not done for the specialist or for a specific personal space, which these handheld paintings, the miniature paintings, are done for. So, taking Parvati as this strong woman who had the most powerful gods as her lover, I began my journey with the New Age Kama Sutra for women.
So, primarily the way the book was written and then drawings were made, how do you see the difference between the way they were drawing man and the way they were drawing women?
So, the first thing is that when I did my New Age Kama Sutra for women, I was also, swimming in waters which I had never swum before. It was like swimming in a whirlpool, very challenging, a bit terrifying, but also very exciting. The first book, which was a bigger book, led to this very intimate, lovely little book, which Speaking Tiger has done, and my editor Ravi Singh gets the best out of me. So here we called it Naika and Kama. She takes her pleasure. So she takes her pleasure becomes the underlying leitmotif of the book. So here it is not Vatsayan talking about, the city slicker, the Nagaraka who's having sexual pleasure with lot of women, or the courtesan who's holding court, or the demure wife, or the seduced wife. So none of that is there. Here is a woman who can also be today's Gen X woman, but I think the Naika here goes for me to be even more evolved and smarter than the Gen X woman. In this book, first and foremost, I have talked about the pleasure of being a woman, the pleasure of being a woman. Now, I want to quote one of my favorite authors, Keshavadas, who wrote the Rasikapriya, and Keshavadas writes beautifully about the Naikas, particularly the Ashta Nayikas. So, in this little poem by part of a poem by Keshavadas, He writes, I'm translating the whole thing into English. She pulled him to her with the good incomparable of her gaze. Her fragrance and her laughter, soft, did linger, and she made him drink the essence of her sweet lips oft. Then her beloved did she win. Then him with talk she busy kept, and so the forest she took him, her mind on sweet enjoyment set. So it's all from the woman's gaze, it is all from the way the woman is leading the man. It is not as if the man is leading the woman. And Keshavadas also identifies different kinds of women. Now, this is also a very, very interesting aspect which I have written, and here it is not just the Ashta Nayikas, which are the different kind of Nayikas that you have, beginning with the Vasaka Sajja Nayika, the one who's dressed up for a union, or the Viroha Kantitika Nayika, one who is young, pining and waiting. There is the Khandita Nayika, the one who is enraged. Then there is the Vipraladha Nayika, the one who has been deceived. Then there is the Proshitika Bhartrika Nayika, one with an absent husband. And then finally is the Abhisarika Nayika, the bold one who battles all kind of hurdles to meet her lover in the middle of the night. So you've seen that Keshavadas has given you the 8 different kinds of women: deceived, with an absent lover, the angry one, and I think the last one I did not mention is the Mugdha Nayika, one who is completely besotted. So you have all these 8 different women, and each with positives and each with certain limitations. And then what he also does is, in a later period, for example, Kalyana Malla also does a series of descriptions of different kind of women which have also been mentioned in the Kama Sutra. One is called Padmini, the lotus woman. She, when following signs and symptoms, appears like Padmini. Her face is pleasing as the full moon, her body well clothed with flesh is soft as mustard flower, her skin is fine, tender and fair as the yellow lotus, never dark colored. Then you have Shankhini, the conch woman. The Shankhini is of a bilious temperament, her skin being always hot and tawny or dark brown. Her body is large, waist is thick and her breasts are small. Her hands, feet are thin and long, and she looks out of the corner of her eyes. So, this is another description. And then we have the Hastini, the elephant woman, who is short of stature. She is stout, coarse bodied, and her skin, if fair, is of dead white. Her hair is tawny, her lips are dark, her voice is harsh, choked and throaty, and her neck is bent. And then we come to Chitrini.
Aren't these all also like objects of desire? I mean,
yeah, they're all objects of desire. So I'll just finish my Chitrini, the 4th one. The Chitrini is of middle size, whether short or tall, and her black hair thin, round, shell-like neck, tender body, waist lean girthed as the lion's beard, full breasts, well turned thighs and heavily made hips. So, all these, if you see, they have a different body type, and in the description some can appear to be like the lotus woman can appear to be the most attractive, but as they say, one man's meat is another man's poison. So, it depends on the man what kind of women he likes. So, you see that as they say that there is a partner made for everybody in life on this earth. So, with these descriptions, these are standard descriptions. This is like Linda Goodman's love signs, right? Or Linda Goodman's signs of the zodiac. So, all these women, whether they are beautiful, whether they are ungainly, whether she's a Hastini whose hips are like huge, but still they all become objects of desire. So, these are just the different gradations, like you have the Ashta Nayikas. So, I found that very, very fascinating, and I thought, why not look at all of them and see, are they represented like that in visual representation? And to my surprise, Nidish, I found that no, the visual representations were not based on all the four. They were most closely akin to the lotus woman, to the Padmini, and the images that I will show you, you will see that most of them are slender, with long tresses, as fair as coconut milk, lips like beetle stained red lips, eyes like almonds. So, they all have a standard kind of aesthetic beauty which you see in this. Now, I will show you 3 images which I think are enough, otherwise it will people may not even buy my book. So, I have to I am going to begin actually with a very beautiful image. It is a sculpture from Khajuraho in the 11th century, and today this piece is in the Cleveland Museum of Art. The Naika, there are 2 women actually. So, this is very, very contemporary. The Naika is pleasing the other woman and is very, very they are in a very, very intimate gesture. They are kissing each other, and both of them are submitting to sensual love. Next to that, I have a beautiful image where there is, it's actually an orgy. So, what you see here, from same sex to an orgy, there is a woman, she could also be the attendant, but for me, I interpret it as an orgy. Here is a woman who is preparing herself for pleasure. This is a 7th century sculpture in the Virupaksh temple at Hampi, and what you see here is there is an attendant on one side and a very feminized man. If you look at the sculptural rendition of the images, they are not very large compared to the temple that it is, but they are extremely, they have all the classical proportions of Gupta classicism. They have very beautiful slender bodies, and in fact, the woman in the center, because she is the main person, the main protagonist, so she is preparing herself, and both her lover or lovers as it were on either side appear smaller and less in command than she is. She is standing right there in the center with her feet apart, bare-bodied, pleasuring herself before she attains maximum pleasure. So, these are 2 very, very interesting sculptures that I have. And then I wanted to also show you young a couple, lovers actually, from the Nathdwara style of painting, miniature painting. The Nathdwara is a very, very highly decorative, not so refined as the Rajasthani miniatures or the Bundi miniatures, which are all part of Rajasthan, like the Jaipur school, the Sirohi. Sirohi is more robust, but Nathdwara is extremely decorative. And in this here, there is a young couple, a young lover, where the woman is absolutely in control. She is leading the man. They are both seated in a pleasure garden outside, and they are both equal partners in the sexual love play. So, for me, that becomes a very, very interesting representation, a visual representation of explicit Maithuna. And I'll end with a slightly more sophisticated couple. The Naika rides the Nayak in their bedchamber, the Jaipur school, which is of the late 19th century. It's a beautiful painting, definitely more refined than the Nathdwara next door. It is inside their boudoir and literally woman on top, where she is very much in control and getting her pleasure. So, these are, the Naika and Kama became a very, very interesting journey for me, because I saw a lot of miniature paintings along the way, and then to handpick the ones, because they had everything from same sex love to orgies, from two women together to many women together, from woman on top to a woman undressing a man. It was very interesting to see that in the medieval period, which was supposed to be the worst period for women and her agency, in the interpretation of the Kama texts, because these are all erotic texts which are based on different aspects. They could be the Rasamanjari, the Rati Manjari. So, from different texts, different sources, I found a variety of paintings where the women were on top.
And how does it how do we see it today? Because largely they have been in a way summarily hinting or articulating their own, desires and navigations through the typical man dominated society. So when we see it now, I mean, how do you see this whole, in their own mind? How are they taking notice of it? Like, this was all done by men, like from Vasana to all these artists.
So, Nidish, I think that, public and private spaces, people behave differently. In a public space, often you see patriarchy, you see men controlling everything. But in the private space, I find women are controlling. And who knows what is happening in the bedroom? Sometimes a man is not as assured as a woman, and sometimes the woman is more assured. So, it is how, I think it depends on the artist. How is he in his private space? So, how he would be having relations with the opposite sex would be the way he would represent the manifestations of women, whether it is a realistic representation or his fantasies, kalpana. So, that depends on the artist, because private and public spaces are very different spaces.
And one of the thing is that the Vasana and these artists and these places, where they also educating men and giving them this sense that, okay, you need to give respect to your sexual partner, give them dignity and agency to them. Because we can see from what we have spoken about till now that men were in the center. It was all very much male world. And then female, some agency was given at some places, and we can see that. But primarily, where men kind of being educated with the process that, okay, this is important to show then give them the space and to articulate that point. Because when we're talking about the categories of women, it also shows when you go deeper into it, they will also vilify, women in this, which when others like in all our mythologies.
But do you really think they vilify women?
In some ways कि हाँ उनका बेटा नहीं हुआ उसके साथ ऐसा नहीं हुआ मतलब ये जो when they talk about so bad.
Well, it's basically because men are writing, right?
Yes,
It's the
that's what I'm
male
saying,
gaze.
yeah.
So when it's the male gaze and when the men are writing, it's obviously different. And when women write, it's obviously different. And I think in today's world and times, women have definitely come of age. They are no longer activists. They are writing from a position of power. They are empowered women and they are sensitive and empathetic, and a lot of it is experiential. So I think women writing today on whether it is like a memoir when they look back, whether it is their own experiences, good, bad, hurtful, abusive, I think women are getting a great amount of strength to come out and literally tell a kiss and tell about themselves.
So when we look at the Indian erotic art, we can see women everywhere, and in temple, as in those miniature art, in texts, in poetry, imagination. Uh, but then, are they being looked at, or they're also looking back? And how do we distinguish between this representation and agency of Indian erotic art of women?
That's really a tough question. That's really a very
Because whenever we start looking, having women looking back, it's like then it becomes scary, it becomes powerful, it becomes then it moves into a Devi space from woman as a humanist space.
it depends who the woman is, how powerful she is. Because, I think the fearlessness happens only either with women with a lot of privilege and a lot of economic wealth, or it happens with women who have nothing. They really don't care. They have nothing. It is the middle class, when we talk of, when George Bernard Shaw talked of the middle class morality, it's that. So it depends who is the woman looking back. When you say the gaze, the exchange of gaze, it depends who is gazing and who is looking back. So it depends on the agency the gazed and the gazer have. That's how I look at it.
And this is where the idea of female gaze becomes important. How is she looking at all of this? Because clearly, and this is what you had done through your book, that that to put a highlighter there, that this is how there's a parallel half world which is also like being not just being subject of it but also as a participant. And uh, so what happened later, how we when we move on from this temple and the text, erotica and sex, when we see modernity now of concentration of female in sexual and erotic art, how has it changed?
I think there's a lot more of commodification of women, a lot more of women coming out into the open, a lot more of the new power woman, because women are now coming of age, Nidish. They are no longer the shrinking wallflower that they used to be earlier. They have definitely more agency, and the young today in particular, I'm full of admiration for them in some ways. They really do not anymore bend down as they used to earlier. I think it has a lot to do with economic empowerment. They no longer have to be subjected or subjugated. Today they feel, what the hell, we can also earn our living. So I think it's a lot to do with financial empowerment, and I think women have come a long, long way. But what I little bit feel bad about is that the aesthetics is missing a little. That's all. But I suppose you need strident voices. The femininity and the aesthetics has taken a hit.
I think what you I think these efforts of writing about Naika and Kama Sutra for women is trying to look at this whole past from the present, the eyes of present or from a woman's eye, uh, and that is, I think, probably far more important for not just for people, but also society as such, that how they are negotiating pleasure, agency, shame, freedom, and self-definition. Uh, so, what should it mean? I mean, when we are talking about, we are recording this podcast in 2026. What should it mean for a a young modern woman to read Kama Sutra now?
So I think it is an important handbook for them. I'm lucky because I'm actually the fulcrum of tradition and modernity. The Gen X today has not experienced tradition the way women of my age have. So if they come and read the text, whether it's the original or translated, I think it would give them insights. It's like a wellness text. It will give them insights and help them understand their feelings, their emotions, their sexuality, their gender, their identity, all the catchwords which we use in critical readings. So, to go back, why do we look back at history? Why is it that we look back at culture? Why is it that we preserve our heritage? Because if we don't understand the past, how do we understand the present and look into the future? So I think the reading of the Kama Sutra is like a wellness book. It makes you feel good about yourself, and it also helps you when you read the erotic texts, or you read a Bhartrihari, or you read a Malik Muhammad Jaisi with his Padmavat, you read the Rasamanjari, you read Keshavadas's Rasikapriya, you just see that what the women did in the past and how did they negotiate their environment, and you can get a lot of nuggets of wisdom from there.
I think that's a very good episode. I think that's one of the, and this is where we are probably talking about something which is so unique to Art Indica, because I don't see you can find this kind of conversation happening elsewhere because of through also Dr. Pandey and she being here. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation here with this podcast. We are going to come with more and more episodes around it. Keep yourself tuned, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Dr. Pandey. Thank you, audience, for this.